HR issues can kill you. One complaint against your company can turn your world upside down. And you spend way too much time dealing with HR when you should be spending your time on making a profit. You should talk to Bambee. With Bambee, get access to your own dedicated US-based HR manager starting at just $99 per month. They get to know you and your business while providing HR expertise and the personal touch you need and want. They're available by phone, email, and real-time chat, so onboarding and terminations run smoothly. Team members reach peak performance, and your business stays compliant with changing HR regulations. And with Bambee's HR Autopilot, you'll automate important HR practices like setting policies, training, and feedback. HR managers can easily cost $80,000 a year, but Bambee starts at $99 per month. Schedule your free conversation today to see how much Bambee can take off your plate. Go to Bambee.com right now and type in Accelerate under podcast when you sign up. It'll really help the show. Spelled BAM, BEE.com. Bambee.com. Type in Accelerate.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Welcome to Accelerate Your Business Growth with your host, Diane Helbig. Diane is a leading small business development and leadership coach, author, and speaker who is passionate about sharing valuable ideas, tips, and techniques with business professionals worldwide. Diane brings you the world's experts and gurus in all things business. Whether it's sales, structure, social media, planning, or plateauing, guests bring their expertise and energy to each episode. When growing your business is your focus, Accelerate Your Business Growth is the show to listen to. Got a topic or guest suggestion? Let Diane know. The goal is to make sure you have the information you need to move your business forward. Thanks for joining us. Settle in and enjoy.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's podcast is sponsored by Audible.com. Audible.com is a leading provider of spoken digital audio entertainment and information. Listen to audiobooks whenever and wherever you want. Get a free book when you sign up for a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/businessgrowth. Over the past several months, I will say, probably into a year, this podcast has been gaining recognition as a great resource for small business owners, entrepreneurs, salespeople, anyone who's really looking to do better things with their business. From MSNBC's Your Business to Inc.com to Fit Small Business, Proven, the blog, and a whole bunch of other sites, we have been included on lists of the best podcasts to listen to. And we're pretty excited about that. This is something we've been working on for, at least 7 years. And we know it is due in large part to the wonderful guests that we have had on this podcast, people coming and sharing their expertise with you, the listeners, so that you can take whatever information you need and do better things. Today, we have with us Chris Daly. Chris is passionate about helping businesses learn what their users want on their website through psychology-based testing and analytics. He started his conversion optimization agency, Daily Conversion, in 2014, which he later merged with Disruptive Advertising, where he currently works as VP of Site Testing and Optimization. Thanks so much for joining me today, Chris.
Thank you so much for having me on today.
Well, I'm excited about this topic. It's one that I don't think we talk about enough. So I think it leaves, my listeners out there wondering a lot and having a lot of questions. So I look forward to us maybe, giving them some answers to some of those questions. And in an effort to do that, I'm actually going to ask you to share with us what you think the biggest problem is that most businesses have with their website.
Yes, that's a good question. And that is a question I get asked a lot. And so the answer that I will give you is the biggest problem that most businesses have is that they think they know what their users want on their website. So when I get introduced to new companies and I will ask them how they arrived at the website design they have, the answer that I get most often is either, oh, well, this is what our biggest competitors are doing, or this is what, people are doing in our space, and, we wanted to have some fresh look. Or it will be an answer of, well, we talked to a creative agency and we put together a best practice design and we think that it looks really nice. And unfortunately, neither of those have anything to do with what your audience actually wants. If a business owner is making a decision based on what he thinks looks best on the site, you are likely going to be missing a lot of opportunities to convert people. One of the things that we've found, because again, what we do is we run all kinds of different tests on websites for businesses. And what we found is that most often what our business owners and what our clients think is going to work on their website doesn't end up working. With almost every test I run for a client, we will run multiple different versions of a page. So let's just say that we're running a test on the home page. I'll give you an example of a client that we just did this for. So we have a client, Diesel Power Gear. They sell a bunch of just random products on their site, from t-shirts, hats, flasks, whatever. And when we looked at their homepage, we said, okay, how did you decide what products you were going to put on your homepage? And they said, well, we took our highest margin products and we put them at the top. And then we wanted an Instagram style homepage. So we wanted you to just be able to scroll and scroll and scroll and see all of our products. So they had, you could just, on a mobile device, you could scroll for, probably 5 minutes through their homepage. And so what the first test that we wanted to run on their homepage was, what product should you have there? All right. Seems like a really logical question to ask. But they hadn't asked it. Most businesses hadn't. So we ran 8 different versions of their homepage. And all we did was we removed some of their sections of products. So we'd have one version where maybe we remove their top sellers, one where we remove, blah, blah, blah. We ran 8 different versions where we had removed things. And then we ran a couple of versions where we substituted or we changed out products that were displayed. Out of those 8 versions of their homepage, so they didn't think that any of these were going to work, especially the ones where we were removing things. Because again, their assumption was the more the better, right? The more stuff you have, the more options people have. Out of those 8 versions, 6 of them increased revenue. And within a month, we had increased revenue generated from their site by over $30,000 just from removing things from the homepage. It was just a very simple assumption, but what happens is when you put too much stuff on a page, users get that fear of missing out, right? They go, oh, well, I want this hat, but maybe there's a better hat on this page. I better keep scrolling. And so when you limit their options, you make it much more likely that people will engage with the thing they find they like. And so that's where it all comes back to breaking down your assumptions about what your users want and actually testing things to find out what your audience does want.
That's really interesting because it sounds to me like they thought about what was best for them, what's the highest margin product, and weren't really thinking about what would a client want to see here? What would draw someone to actually take action when they're here, right? Because talk some about conversion. Is conversion always a sale, or is sometimes it getting them to reach out and say, okay, I want to buy something from you, let's talk about it?
Oh, yeah. A conversion can be anything from a
Okay.
purchase to a click. Sometimes you just want people to click on stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, what the bottom line is you want people to take action on your site of some kind. If you're a blog, maybe you want people to subscribe. If you are a sales company, you might want them to fill out a lead form. If you're a media company, you might just want them to read another article or watch a video. And so any of those things, any action the user can take can be a conversion. And so conversion optimization is about figuring out how to get people to do whatever it is that you want them to do.
Okay. So that sounds to me, this will sound really simple. I don't think it is, because that sounds to me like first you need to know what you want them to do.
Yes.
Yeah. And do you think business owners struggle with that?
Oh, yeah, especially when you have more than one thing that they could do, right? So I'll tell you who are really liable to this are B2B companies, because a lot of B2B business owners will have, maybe like a small, medium, large size offering, or maybe they'll have an offering for tech companies and an offering for local businesses and whatever it may be.
Yeah.
You're going to have lots of different offers, and so when you have something like that, most businesses go, well, I don't want to alienate my users. It goes back to that Diesel Power Gear example where I don't know if people want a hat. They might want a shirt, or maybe they want board shorts, or maybe they want a shot glass. And so I'm just going to show them everything. And so again, that's where you gotta step away from your assumptions and say, okay, I have 8 or 30 different things that I want them to do. Let's find out what they are most likely to do. Instead of giving them 30 options, let's give them one. And let's figure out if we could just show one thing on this page, what one thing is going to get the highest engagement from our audience. And then you test all of your different possibilities, and you will find what your audience responds best to. And maybe they want 3 things instead of one, but going back and asking yourself those questions instead of saying, I want them to do this, so I'm going to force them.
Yeah, right. That's what I think people do. So talk some about what some of the things are that influence behavior on a website.
Yeah, so I've spent at least 6 years in this industry. And when I very first started running tests on websites, I had no clue what I was doing. I just tried, changing the design, maybe switching an image, but there was no methodology, no rhyme or reason behind it at all. And over the last 6 years, I have kind of boiled it down to 6 things. As we have, because we've run hundreds, if not thousands, of tests over here at Disruptive, and out of all those tests, there's really 6 major things that will typically influence how a user engages with your site. And so those 6 things, there's 3 positive things. I call them motivation factors. And so the 3 motivation factors are, number 1, your value proposition. And value proposition is really, what are you offering and why do people care, right? So does this address a pain point that people have? Does this provide a solution for something? What is it that you have to offer? And value proposition is, it sounds simple. It can be a really tricky thing, because oftentimes business owners think that their product or their offering will solve a multitude of needs. And so, like the iPhone is going to solve, it's going to give you maps to get to where you need, and phone calls and video, and it's your picture, it's your camera, and it's everything. It's everything you ever need. And so with value proposition, it's really critical to ask yourself, what value proposition do people actually care about? And instead of making assumptions, trying some different value propositions. So that's number 1. Number 2 is your call to action. So again, we talked about this earlier. What is it that you want people to do? And even beyond that, how are you telling people to do it? So this is something that a lot of businesses struggle with. It'll be like, what do you want people to do on this page? Well, we want people to fill out the form. Okay, well, where's the form? Well, it's all the way at the bottom of the page. You get to the bottom of the page and it says learn more, and then you fill out the form. It's like, well, okay, that's not really a great call to action. Why do I want to learn more? And what's going to happen when I do this? And so it's important with call to actions to be visible. So people should be able to find it immediately when they get on your page. They should know exactly what they're supposed to do. Even if they need to read a bunch of stuff before they engage, it's helpful for people psychologically to have some kind of a reference point to go, okay, that's the call to action. When I'm ready for it, I'll click on it. Instead of people going, oh, there's just a bunch of content on this page. I don't want to read a bunch of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So call to action is a big one. And then the last motivation factor is your content, of course. And so with content, it's important to ask yourself questions like, how much content does my audience want? What kind of content does my audience want? How should my content be formatted, right? Should I use paragraphs, or should I use bullet points, or should I use checkboxes? Like are people going to respond well to here? So those first three things are what I call the motivation factors, because those are what will motivate people to take action. The second three things are what I call resistance factors. They're things that can really inhibit your users from taking action. And so the first thing is distractions. Anything, and literally anything on your site could be a distraction. If we go back to that diesel power gear example I mentioned earlier, their other products were distractions. You know, so your other offers might be distractions. Images can be distracting. Videos can be distracting. And so again, you want to challenge your assumptions and test whether or not something actually helps conversion rates. I can't tell you how many companies invest tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in videos for their site. And when we test removing those videos, conversion rates go up. All of a sudden, they've been spending tens of thousands of dollars producing these videos that their users don't actually want to see. And so you want to test, again, what is helping our users and what is distracting them. Okay. The next thing is anxiety. Anything that causes your users to feel frustrated, to feel uncertain, to feel fear, that's never a good thing. And so, again, you might want to test what kinds of things might cause anxiety. Lots of content can cause anxiety. A super long video might cause anxiety. You know, there's lots of things. And the last thing in terms of resistance is how responsive your site is. So not just does it work on mobile, but is your site customized for what your mobile users want? I find that this is probably one of the biggest areas of opportunity for businesses, because most businesses just shrink down their desktop site and then all of a sudden, boom, they've got a mobile site. Or some businesses go, oh, well, we want to build mobile first, so we'll build a really awesome mobile site and then we'll just expand it for desktop. Well, neither of those audiences are the same. Most times, mobile users are going to even want a different call to action than your desktop users might. Mobile users are a lot more likely to call than desktop users. And so on mobile, instead of having a form on your site, you might just want a click to call button, and vice versa for desktop, right? Or on mobile, instead of having the user read a bunch of content before they can add something to their cart, you might just want your pictures and then your add to cart button. And so again, you want to ask yourself, not just, do I have a site that works on mobile? Do I have a site that works on desktop? But have I actually tested? Do I actually know what my audience wants on each of those devices? So those are the big 6 things that have the biggest impact on conversion rates.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. It's so interesting. I loved what you said about challenge your assumptions, because it's so true. People get so locked in that they think they know what people want to see or what information people want, and usually it's based on what they want to tell them, not really what the audience wants to know.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a tricky, really tricky sort of thing. So I like this thinking beyond yourself, like getting outside of your own head and saying, okay, now wait a minute, and then testing it so you can see what actually is working and what isn't. So you have to sort of be not, what's the word I'm looking for? Not married to a certain solution, right? You can't be overly,
And one of the things that I invite my clients and my employees to do, the question that I have them ask themselves is, if they don't want what I have on the site now, what else might they want to see? So for all of those questions, for your content, if they don't like the content you have right now, what is some other content that they might want? And that can help you to get out of, because usually, of course, a business owner wouldn't put content on their site unless they thought that people wanted to see it. And so usually you've already got your best guess on the site. And so step outside your best guess and say, okay, if they don't want your best guess, what's something else they might want? If they don't like the picture that you have on there, is there something else they might want to see where that picture is? So that can be something that's helpful to start spawning ideas.
Right, exactly. You got to be creative. You got to be a creative thinker and be willing to.
Yes.
Try things. That's interesting. Okay. So a lot of companies find it really difficult to be satisfied with their website, and especially if it's not getting them the conversion they want. And so they will do like a major redesign. Do you think that's a solution, or are there things they should do before then? Should they ever really be doing a major redesign, or just doing testing of assumptions?
Yeah, I've got some strong opinions on this, of course, since I'm a tester. And I get why companies do major redesigns. There's a few big reasons why companies do redesigns. One big reason is they want to rebrand their company, right? This happens a lot. We're going through a rebrand. We're going to change the color palette. We're going to change our logo. We're going to change whatever, how the site structure flows. That's a big reason. And that makes sense to me. One of the other biggest reasons that I find is just people want to keep their website fresh, right? Businesses want to keep their website from looking stale. They want to keep up with their competitors. They want to keep up with the latest trends online. And this is a really dangerous one. So I will go back to, again, I keep using Diesel Power Gear as an example. So before Diesel Power Gear came to work with us, they spent about $350,000 on a big website redesign. And really what it was a website reskin. So they basically kept the exact same website. They just put some new makeup on it, right? They just wanted it to look fresher and cleaner, or whatever it was that they were going for. So spent $350,000 on this design. And their expectation, of course, you wouldn't spend $350,000 on something unless you were expecting it to increase sales. So their expectation was that sales were going to increase. Okay. So they went through this big, huge, long project, and not only does it take $350,000, but it takes hours and hours and months of time with your creative agency, with your developers, to go through and do all the QA and to proof the actual design mock-ups and, go back and forth on the copy. I mean, it's a significant investment. And what ended up happening when they launched their new site? Nothing happened. I mean, sales didn't go down, which is great, but sales didn't go up. And the reason is they didn't have any clue what their users wanted. They were making an arbitrary decision based on this assumption that users didn't like their current design. And they may have even gotten some feedback. Here's another really dangerous thing that happens with business owners. They'll get feedback from a few clients that they don't like something, and they'll assume that represents the majority of their users. And so they may have even gotten some feedback that the site design was frustrating, or they couldn't find what they were looking for. But ultimately, they were making tons of assumptions and drawing all kinds of conclusions based on really just a lot of hearsay. And so, when we started running some of these tests on their site, all of a sudden we got a ton of clarity into what their users actually want. So to go back and answer your question, should companies do a major redesign? Maybe. But if you are going to do a redesign, before you do it, you need to run some tests to figure out what your audience actually cares about on the site. Because otherwise, you might just end up spinning your wheels on a bunch of junk that no one cares about and end up doing what Diesel Power Gear did, spending, getting a $350,000 site that is exactly the same, even though it looks different. And so it's important to run these tests to figure out, okay, we know what the best practices are in terms of what our users want. They care about this, this, and this. They don't care about these things. And so if there's things your users don't care about, like maybe they don't care what pictures you use on a page. So then you get free reign on that. You can pick any picture you want for those pages because your users don't care about it. But if your users do care that the button should be red because it really contrasts the rest of the site, then don't use a blue button because it matches your new logo. Use the thing that actually works for your users. Or if your users don't want a lot of content, don't spend a ton of time writing up a ton of copy on every page. So that's really where I have a strong opinion is website redesigns can be helpful, and frankly, they can make a huge positive impact, but only if you do it using data-driven principles instead of just random, creative ideas.
Yeah, that's really valuable, because I think I could see a lot of small business owners being in constant change mode because they hear one thing from one person and then something else from somebody else, and then they read something about what people want, or what customers want, or whatever, and so they end up in this constantly, okay, now I have to do this, okay, now I have to do that kind of thing, and they don't ever get it where it needs to be because they're never asking that question. They're never saying, okay, what does my user want to experience?
In fact, just to go along with that, so my wife has started doing some work with a new clothing boutique. I won't mention the name, but so she's running a lot of the online marketing, and she talked to another online boutique that was doing really well, and this online clothing boutique said, oh, you know what? Like, we just added this thing to our site, this new widget, and we love it. And and our sales have just been going up and up and up. And so, number one, they hadn't tested it, and they were making assumptions that their sales were going up because they added this widget. And so, not only were they making a not informed decision, but they convinced my wife to put that on the site because they said sales were going up and up and up, and because they added this thing. And so now all of this misinformation was being spread, and other people start using it. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have heard clients tell me that same thing. Our biggest competitor is doing this, and they are crushing it right now, as if to say this is the reason that they're doing so well is because they have this thing on their site. And then when we will go in and test that feature, like one thing that we've tested on several e-commerce client sites is there's these little pop-up notifications that will tell you every time someone buys something, right? And they go, this is great social proof. Like, look at this. You get a pop-up notification. We have so many people buying stuff. You get one of these every 30 seconds. This is great. Like, you just get so much proof that our products are awesome. But every time I've tested one of those things, it's actually decreased sales because what's happening, your users keep getting this notification that keeps popping up on their screen, and it's distracting them.
Yeah.
It's not really helping them make a purchase decision. It's just creating motion on the screen every 30 seconds that makes them look away from whatever they're looking at to see what people just bought. And so, again, like, it's super important to not make assumptions based on what anybody else is doing. Or even if you have tried it on another site and it worked, that doesn't mean it's going to work for your audience. And so it's super important to test those.
Wow, that's a big one. Yeah, because I could see people getting, making the decision because of previous experience with a whole other site and a whole other client base. Yes. It's funny, you were talking about that pop-up thing, and all I kept thinking about was there was a site that I went to. I have no idea what one it was, but every time I would click on something, a pop-up would come up, the same pop-up. It's like, okay, if I close this, it means I don't want it.
Right.
So stop popping it up because you're getting in the way of me just getting the information that I'm looking for.
Yep.
No thanks. So, but they think that's valuable for them because they're trying to capture my email address or something. They're trying to get me to do something they want me to do, not necessarily something I want to do.
Yes, exactly.
Wow, very interesting. All right, I got to take a quick sponsor break. Accelerate Your Business Growth podcast is happy to be sponsored by Audible.com. Audible.com is a leading provider of spoken digital audio entertainment and information. They have over 150,000 titles to choose from, and you can listen to them on any device, including whatever you're hearing us on right now. If you sign up at our link, which is audibletrial.com/businessgrowth, you get one free audiobook and a 1-month trial of the service. Some examples of books you can listen to on audible.com are 80/20 Sales and Marketing by Perry Marshall and The Go-Giver by Bob Berg. So visit audibletrial.com/businessgrowth, explore the books that are of interest to you, and receive one free audiobook when you sign up for the trial. Today we're talking with Chris Daly about website testing and the impact that that testing can have on your conversions and the effectiveness of your website. So, Chris, let's go back to talking about mobile because you mentioned it before. What are some of the things people should be thinking about with their mobile site? You mentioned a couple of them, but if you would just go into a little bit more detail, please.
Yeah, so one of the first things that businesses really need to think about is what are their mobile users doing when they are coming to their site? This is one of the big, I think, areas of misinformation because people think about mobile users just like sitting on their couch at home, browsing your website. And that may be what some of your mobile users are doing, but more often than not, mobile users are going to be on the go, right? They're going to be kind of out and about. Maybe they're with friends. Maybe they're at dinner. There's a variety of circumstances that people could be in when they are on their mobile device. And so it's important that you take that into consideration as you are thinking about your customer persona. Because on a desktop device, if someone is coming to your site on a desktop computer, chances are they are stationary. They're sitting down somewhere and they probably have a little bit more time on their hands, right? Mobile users are a lot more finicky. They're used to being on social media on their phones, and social media is go, 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 go. And especially if your users are coming from social media. So if you are, a fashion blog or any kind of thing in the fashion industry, if you sell clothes, you're going to be getting a lot of people from Facebook. And people that come from Facebook are going to expect a certain site experience. They don't want to read your company story, right? They don't want to read a ton of content, and they don't want to have to jump through a bunch of hoops in order to decide, what they want. Similarly, mobile users, despite what people think, mobile users don't typically like videos. So this is something that you want to test, but people assume, oh, well, mobile users I watch videos on my phone all the time because I watch videos on Facebook or I watch videos on YouTube. But the fact of the matter is, when you're browsing the web on your phone, you may not have your earphones plugged in. If you're out with your friends, you don't want some video popping up and you're probably not going to watch it. And so if your entire site experience is based around people watching videos, you're going to be missing the ball big time with mobile users. And so it's important to get down to the basics, to give people, and again, you can test all of these things because there is exceptions to everything that I'll bring up. I have tested sites where videos work great. And I've tested a lot of sites where videos hurt conversion rates for mobile users. So it's important to test this, but what I typically will recommend testing is removing as much content as is possible. So strip it down to the very basics. Make sure that because you have a very limited screen size, that phone real estate, that screen real estate is very valuable. You can only fit 2 or 3 things on a mobile screen at a time. And so it's important that you really think about, what am I putting in that screen? And make sure that there is something for that mobile user to do in that initial screen when it loads. That's one other big challenge that I see with mobile sites is you'll get to a mobile site, and because they've crammed all of their desktop stuff onto your mobile phone, you'll get to this page, you'll have this giant image that isn't formatted for my mobile device. I scroll down, there's like 4 giant paragraphs of content. Then below that, I'll have, if I'm looking at a product, it's like I've got the price down there, and I have to scroll down like four screens before I actually get to add something to my cart. So it's important to really, again, take that mobile experience into consideration and, again, test stripping things down, try to remove everything you possibly can. And then the last thing, I already mentioned this earlier, but your mobile users might want a different call to action than your desktop users. And if they don't, if you're selling a product on your website, they might want to add it to their cart, but you might want to take your mobile users straight to checkout. You might want to skip the cart altogether on mobile because every additional step you add on a mobile device gives that user an additional chance to get distracted by a text message or something else. And so we've run tests, again, where we just cut a middle step out of the whole process. Cut out the cart, cut out the contact us page, just have a form that pops up, and conversion rates will typically go up quite a bit from doing things like that. So, yeah.
Huh, that's interesting. And it really is, from what I'm hearing, it's really about asking yourself the question, what are the circumstances in which someone would be going to my site from their phone, and what is the reason, right? What are they trying to find out? I mean, usually it's the address, the phone number, the hours, really specific information, because they're out already. They're out and about, and they want to know whether they can, whether you're open, whether you've got specials, who knows? So, and that is, would you say that's true for any industry with their mobile site, or are some industries more prone to people checking their site from their phone?
Well, so there's definitely, if you sell a product on your site, any kind of e-commerce business will typically get a lot more traffic than a B2B business. So B2B companies, again, because you are marketing to people while they're at work, the chances are much higher they're going to be on a desktop, on a laptop or whatever. Versus, again, if you're selling a product, you may get women who are shopping from home, or you may get, men who are shopping on the go or whatever. And so that's one thing. And one other thing I just want to say about mobile, one dangerous assumption that a lot of companies make, especially B2B, is, or sites that sell high ticket items. So like if you sell aftermarket parts for diesel trucks, or if you sell I can't even think, a pacemaker, something that costs a lot of money. A lot of those companies will assume, oh, well, someone is only going to come to my site on a mobile device for research, and then they're going to come back and buy it on a desktop device. That is a very dangerous assumption to make, because you immediately write off all of your mobile traffic. And it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you tell yourself that mobile is going to convert lower, so you don't spend a lot of time optimizing your mobile experience. So your mobile traffic does convert lower, and then you say, see, our mobile traffic sucks. What I have found in every case that I have worked with a client that has said that is, if your mobile experience is good enough, people aren't going to research on their phone and come back on a desktop to buy. They'll buy on their mobile if it is a good enough mobile experience. And so it's important that business owners get out of that mindset that mobile is for research and desktop is for buying, because it's not true.
That's fascinating. Okay. So if a company hasn't done this before, they haven't tried this A/B testing, and how do they start? Are there tools that they can use? What do you suggest they do?
Yeah, so there are lots of different tools that you can use for A/B testing. The couple that I would suggest that are kind of the easiest to get started with, one is VWO, Visual Website Optimizer, and the other one is Optimizely. So these two tools are really straightforward. I mean, they're very easy to install on your website. It's just a single snippet of JavaScript. So you can have your developer install it. Or you can install it yourself. It takes literally like 5 minutes to get the tool installed. And then actually building a test in these tools is fairly easy, at least to build simple tests. So a simple test is something like testing a new headline on a page. In these tools, literally, you just go in, you click on the thing you want to change, and you write in your edited text. Or if you want to change the color of a button, or you want to change where something is positioned, you can just click on it and drag it to a different location. So it's very easy to build basic tests. And so I almost always suggest, if you haven't run tests before, get a testing tool and run a headline test. Test a couple of different, and I always recommend test something that is radically different. So if you are in home mortgages and your headline on your site says, "Your friendly, home mortgage provider," instead of testing that, test something like low rates guaranteed or whatever it is you can say in your industry. But say something that's very different. Don't go, instead of saying, your friendly mortgage provider, instead of saying that, saying your favorite mortgage provider, because you're not going to typically have dramatic or great results with that. But start out with a simple headline test. You can literally set these up and have them running within an hour.
Wow.
Even if you have very little technical skills. So start out with that. And one thing that I always, I recommend this to my employees, to my clients, to anybody who wants to get started, have every test be based on a business question. So this helps you avoid just random ideas where you're like, oh, let's try something. Create a business question. So ask yourself something about your users. So it could be something like, what headline will convert the best? That's a great, and you want it to be an open-ended question. So something that any answer could fulfill, right? So what headline will convert best? Instead of saying, I see this happen a lot when people will create questions for a test. Will a direct call to action convert better than a generic one? Because then you're only really left with one option, yes or no, right?
Right. Right.
Versus if you say, what headline will convert best? Well, now you could write up 18 different headlines, and even if your existing headline wins, you still have answered your question. You've learned something about your audience. So now anytime someone says, hey, what should the headline be on the home page? You already know. So create a very specific business question, open-ended, that you want to answer by your test. What color should our buttons be? How much content should we have on the page? What formatting should we use for the content? Those are great questions to ask. And then just make sure that you've got very specific success metrics set up for the test. So if you're testing what button color works best, you might want to test, your success metric is probably going to be clicks on that button. And so you're going to test whether or not clicks go up or down. If you are testing what price should we show on our products, you might want to test how many people add it to their cart or actual checkouts. And it's very easy to set these goals up in these testing tools. So again, go and get one of these testing tools, set up a very simple test, headline test, button colors, content amount, just rewrite some copy. These are all fairly simple tests to set up, and then run them. I mean, it's once you start to see results, it's a lot of fun. Now, that also brings a question up of what happens if I run a test and nothing happens, or conversion rates go down. So the first thing, this happens with a lot of companies. They will try A/B testing out, and maybe they don't see any results. If you don't see any results, that means your audience doesn't care about the thing you're testing. It doesn't mean that you're never going to be able to get any results from testing. It just means you didn't pick the right thing to test, right? And so that's fine. That's the great thing about testing is you're experimenting. You're trying to find the things that your audience care about. So I mentioned 6 things earlier that typically have the biggest influence. If you test value propositions and nothing happens, okay, that's great. We know that our audience doesn't care about the value proposition. Let's go to the next thing. Let's go to content. Now let's go to the call to action. Because one of those things is going to resonate with your audience. And so, testing and experimenting is about finding what things do our audience care about and how can we really capitalize on that.
And how long do you have to test it for?
Yeah, so tests, I have a few recommendations here. This is kind of a touchy subject for testers because there's not a defined answer. A lot of it is going to be based on how much traffic you get and how many conversions you get. So my minimum answers are you want to run a test no less than a week. So you need to get a full week, 7 days of a test minimum before you even look at the results, I usually suggest, because your traffic is going to convert differently on the weekend than it does on the weekdays. And so you want to make sure you get every day of the week in there. In fact, I was just looking at conversion rates for one of our e-commerce clients that sells jewelry online. And we looked at conversion rate by day, and literally every single day had a different conversion rate by a long shot. I mean, conversion rates fluctuated. They would go down anywhere between 1.5% all the way up to 4% on some of their highest converting days. And so it's important that you get all those different days in there so that you get, your traffic behaving in different ways on your site. So no less than a week. And then you want to make sure that you get enough conversions to see some kind of statistical significance. So these testing tools are going to, they automatically calculate statistical significance for you, but you want to judge that against the actual amount of data. So I typically suggest at least 50 conversions per variation you're testing. So, because what will happen is you'll go in and you'll see, oh, wow, one of my variations has double the conversion rate. It's literally twice as high. And then you go in and it's like 2 conversions against 1 conversion. And so you're not really looking at a good sample size here. So you want to make sure, again, minimum of a week, get a good, decent number of conversions in there. And if it needs to run for a month, that's fine. Let it run for a month, and don't be too anxious to move on to your next test that you don't let yourself gather good data, because otherwise you run the risk of calling the test prematurely and you have a false winner. So you push something on your site, all of a sudden you're making a ton of assumptions that something works when it actually didn't.
Yeah, great. That's great. Thank you. Because I could see people doing that, wanting, instant results and changing stuff so often that they never really know what works and what doesn't work. So
yeah,
good. Yeah. Wow. Wild. So this is so great. I mean, I have learned a ton, which I really appreciate. And so thank you so much for sharing this information. Will you also share with our listeners how they can find you, what you've got going on? Because I have a feeling a lot of them are, going to want to solicit your help.
Yeah, you bet. So we've actually put together a guide that covers a lot of the basics that we've talked about today, and then a lot of other things like, a few tests that we might recommend if you're just getting started. So if people want to download our starter guide, it's free. They just go to disruptiveadvertising.com/guide, and you can download the guide there. And there's a little checkbox if you're interested in talking with us about testing. If you don't check that box, then we're not going to harass you. So you can just get the guide. And then I am actually in February, so in a few months coming up here, I'm going to be doing a workshop at Social Media Marketing World. So that's towards the end of February. And I'm going to be running through a 90-minute course talking about, I'm going to be showing a lot of cool case studies of tests that we've run that have been successful. I'm going to be talking through how you can actually set up a testing, program for your company. And so if people want to come and get really in depth with me, I would love to see some of your listeners at Social Media Marketing World.
Oh, cool. That's in February?
February of 2018, yeah.
Okay. All right. Awesome. They should all look into that. So cool. Well, thank you. As I said, thank you very much. I really appreciate the conversation and all of the information.
You bet. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. I would also like to thank our listeners and our sponsor. Please go to audibletrial.com/businessgrowth to sign up for a free 30-day trial of Audible and get your free audiobook when you do that. Continue to prosper and be curious. And until we meet again on another episode of Accelerate Your Business Growth, goodbye and good day.
The world's best-known investor and Wall Street expert Warren Buffett once said, "Wall Street is the only place that people ride to in a Rolls-Royce to get advice from those who take the subway." Mr. Buffett's quote is remarkably accurate, but how many people would rather receive advice from him than someone simply guessing? Welcome to Buy, Hold, Sell, your single source for Wall Street knowledge and profitable guidance. Please join me, Todd Schoenberger, and fellow trader Tobin Smith, as well as host Veronica Dudo, for a podcast known to move the needle for investors. Tobin and I are seasoned Wall Street executives with deep investment experience, and we are prepared to share our advice to those who choose to listen. Download Buy, Hold, Sell today on the Evergreen Podcast Network or your favorite podcast channel.